welcome back. This is Wendy Historian, and today we are talking about One Direction fanfiction. This past December saw the release of the young adult book, If This Gets Out, a novel about two best friends in a boy band who fall in love with each other and then are forced by management to hide their relationship. Little wonder why so many people thought that this book was either written to seem like a One Direction fanfiction or else started out as one. After all, it certainly wouldn't have been the first time nor the last time that One Direction fanfiction was published with just a couple name changes. Haze by Brazilian author May Basiqueto. Fanfiction has always been a massive part of Directioner life. Just think about how important to our fan culture the video fanfiction The Adventurous Adventures of One Direction is.
Nice.
And when the earliest 1D days, fans were obsessed with so-called imagines, Tumblr microfictions starring the boys and your name or Y/N. Imagine inserted a fan into a romanticized scenario featuring one or more of the 1D boys and usually accompanied by a photo. Well, this was quickly declared cringe, and because Directioners love making fun of ourselves more than anybody else does, crack imagines started popping up. And a step up from these microfiction imagines was one-shots, 2,000 to 5,000 word short stories revolving around a single climactic scene. And back in the day, they were frequently vampire-themed, I think because Twilight was big around the same time. And they are long-form fics, for example, Sold, which is allegedly the very first fan fiction in the now infamous genre of I put my hair in a messy ponytail before my addict mother sold me to One Direction. Ah, memories. And 1D fanfiction was broken down into two major camps, hetfic and slashfic. And while Tumblr was a popular place to find One Direction fanfiction, it was far from the only place. We also had Quotev and fanfiction.net and LiveJournal and OneDirectionFanfiction.org and of course Wattpad and AO3. Wattpad was the big one, with AO3 or Archive of Our Own being a close second. If you wanted het, you went to Wattpad. If you wanted slash, you went to AO3. Het, short for heterosexual, usually featured one of the boys in a romantic pairing with a female celebrity, or more commonly, an original character. After was one such fic, starring the good girl college student Tessa, who was lured into a sensual relationship with her classmate, the charming bad boy Harry. Across platforms, this fanfic got 1 billion reads. Billion. With a B. We all read after. It was impossible to go to a corner of the One Direction internet space without finding someone who was talking to someone else about this fanfiction. The series of books was not only traditionally published in hard copy, but also got a movie deal. A One Direction fanfiction made into a movie. Another super popular hetfic back in the day was Dark. If you've ever seen references to or edits of Dark Harry, this story is where they come from. A story about an overprotective boxer with an aggressive temper who falls in love with Beau, a girl totally opposite. Whilst a majority of hetfics were thinly veiled self-inserts starring Harry, the other boys did their fair share of showing up in stories with millions of reads. For example, Laced, a dystopian future smut fic about a girl who was kidnapped and sold as a slave to Zayn.
I was kidnapped and enslaved by the wealthiest of them all, Zayn Malik.
Or the 2014 Waddy Award winner Motel 6 that features Niall on the run from a gang that's threatening his life, who then teams up with a teen mom on the run from an abusive boyfriend. Flashfic, on the other hand, pairs the boys up usually with each other, but sometimes with other male celebrities or original male characters. And while that kind of thing might sound fairly controversial today, it originally didn't start out as any more controversial than the other subgenres of fic. In fact, the very first fandom viral famous One Direction fanfiction was a slash fic called Room 317. Originally published on LiveJournal at the start of 2012, but seemingly written before the boys released their first album, Room 317 is a slow burn Larry angst fic that also pairs Liam and Niall. And it was loosely canon compliant, albeit with way more health crises. Back when it was first published, everyone read it, whether you shipped Larry or not. But the author took it down only a few months after she posted it because some people on Twitter started sending the fic to Liam's in real life friends and asking them to read it. Faux pas. While most slash fics had original plots, like Young and Beautiful that saw the boys as classmates at an elite boarding school, some simply mirrored popular book or movie plots and inserted the 1D boys as characters, such as the Sweet Home Alabama-inspired Got the Sunshine on My Shoulders. The second most popular slash pairing was Zayn and Liam, such as in the Roommates AU Not Happening. why fanfic is so popular within the 1D fandom. Most importantly being that at their height, One Direction's fanbase was primarily made up of teenage girls who were being raised in a society where they were shunned and shamed for expressing any sort of sexual interest. Fanfiction provided a safe place to explore one's own sexual identity, and it was such a big part of fan life that not only were the boys once asked if they would act out a fanfic during an interview.
What is going on with punctuation here? Sure, how at ease he was, he removed his shirt. Jesus. Now, Ellen Louie did not want to be left out, so the three sat shirtless.
But the HBO show Euphoria famously and quite unpopularly referenced One Direction fanfiction with one of their characters.
What are you doing to calm your nerves?
And 1D fanfiction in general is not without controversy. Firstly, One Direction fanfiction falls under a fic subgenre called RPF, or real person fic. And RPF is a controversial thing no matter the fandom, because these stories tend to center around romantic relationships that are very often featuring explicit smut scenes. So you're more or less making about a real person without that person's consent. Secondly, because there's always been a dearth of younger fans in the fandom, a lot of the smut is underage and borders, if not outrightly is, phallic in nature. There was an absolutely vile example of this sort of fic a couple years ago that paired Zayn with a 3-year-old. And it caused widespread uproar in the fandom, as it should have. Thirdly, in the slash camp of the fan fiction, there has always been criticism that people who read and write slash pairings are fetishizing gay relationships. It's important to note, however, that One Direction did not create slash fiction, and that this subgenre of fan fiction has been popular since the 1960s and 1970s in the Star Trek fandom. So whether you're looking for a white-collar crime conspiracy thriller with a het romance, such as Seaside Styles' Hidden, or the Enemies with Benefits high school AU Unbelievers, 1D fanfiction has something for everyone and continues to be a core tenet of fan life, for better or worse.